Hey guys, Matty here. I hope you're all doing great. Today I want to share with you how I get film looking photos out of my Fujifilm files. If you've been paying any attention to the film market right now, you realize that it's incredibly hard to get different stocks you might want, and also that the price is kind of skyrocketing. I don't know if this is a COVID thing or a supply chain thing, but what it's meaning, I'm far less motivated to go out and actually buy film, and so I figured a video like this would make sense right now. Now, before I go on, I want to say that I don't think you're ever going to be able to replicate the feeling and the style of film in digital files. For some reason, film photos evoke a different kind of emotion. You can look at your old film photos and get a really great sense of the moment where you were when you took it, whereas compared to digital files, you don't get that same kind of feeling. I don't know why, but this is a really cool element I like about film, but I do think that it's worth saying that you're not going to be able to replicate, but you can really get super close. And obviously you shouldn't expect your digital files to ever look exactly like film, but I think editing in a film style is a really cool experience for some photographers trying to find their feet and find their style. Now, Fujifilm is famous for its colors, whether you're a RAW shooter or a JPEG shooter, but for the JPEG shooters out there are a few things you can change in camera that are really gonna pump out a really good looking film image. Personally, I would gravitate towards shooting in JPEG maybe 10% of the time when I'm out. These when I'm out with friends and family, when I know the images I'm shooting aren't gonna require any sort of post-processing. For the other 90% of the time, I shoot in RAW, which means I'm gonna get a lot more flexibility when it comes to editing, which is something we're gonna go over today. For the many JPEG shooters that I know are out there, these are the settings I would change in camera to help get a more film looking photo. So once you're in the settings of your Fujifilm, I'd first head to image quality and make sure fine is selected. That's just gonna make sure we're in JPEG mode. And from there, if we scroll down to film simulation and we stick with the Astia soft, I think the colors and the contrast of Astia mold best to a film looking image. You can scroll down and pick one yourself, but I'd stick with Astia. Moving on, grain effects. Because this is film, we wanna make sure there's a bit of grain noticeable, so I like to have that at strong. Dynamic range is really important because with film you get a lot of dynamic range, so let's keep that at 400. White balance, you can keep it auto. For the highlights, I like to keep that at +3 just to give a bit of brightness to the image, and that's the exact same with the shadow tones. I don't want my shadows to be too dark or too black, so I'm gonna keep that at -2. From there, colors are personal preference. I have a lot of vibrance in my images, so let's keep that at +4. And then the sharpness I'm gonna drop down because we are trying to replicate film. The rest I just leave, but for now that's a nice Fujifilm recipe to get started when you're trying to get a nice film shot out of camera. So for everyone who wants to get that film look out of their raw Fujifilm files, let's jump into Lightroom and I can show you how I go about it. So now that we're in Lightroom, I'm gonna show you how I actually edit these Fujifilm RAW files to look like film. So if we jump in, this first image, you'll probably remember from last week's video. It was a street photography video I did in Fremantle, and this is probably one of my favorite images from the afternoon, but we're gonna use this as a bit of a starting point. So if we jump in, what we're first gonna use is the preset that you'll find in the link below. You can go download it and use it on any photos you'd like. This is a bit of a base preset, so there's not any major adjustments, but it gives you a good starting point should you wanna edit like this. So if we hit the film preset, you notice that it instantly brightens up the image. So you look back, boom, like a lot of color. This image is actually quite a vibrant looking. You've got the greens, the reds, the oranges, and the blues. So that's what this preset's gonna do off the bat. You can see for the Fujifilm shooters, I've got the profile in the camera, in-camera Astia. So that's gonna give you that look. For those that don't, you can go here and make some changes should you want. But I like the Astia look for this sort of image. So to start off with, let's sort out the crop and level that up. I'm just gonna talk while I do this, so bear in mind if I mumble and stuff like that, but this is how I like to edit. So we've got this pretty nice looking image. You can see the preset's done like quite a lot of work for us already on this, but I'm just gonna drop that down a little bit because I think if it's too bright and vibrant, it's got a lot of digital look to it. So to take that edge off, let's just bring that down a tad. Perfect. Okay, so moving on to the highlights, we can play around with them a bit, but I kind of like where they are. I'm definitely gonna lift up the shadows and same with the black. So let's just see, you can see it working with the doors and the windows there where the dresses seem to be, but yeah, let's, about there looks nice. So you can see that it's slowly coming together as a nice looking film shot. Now, this kind of preset is based off Portra 400. This is the film stock I like to use and a stock that I think is really valuable. It is a little pricey, but it's definitely worth it. Portra has amazing colors and you can probably get them out with the vibrant slider on your images. This photo, to be honest, I'm pretty happy with where they're at, but maybe in the next photo, I'll play a bit more with the vibrancy there. Quickly, clarity, you kind of want to take that edge off so you can bring that down a little bit, but you don't want your image to look too soft. So clarity is a really tricky slider that you need to manage. So I would just keep it above -10, like try keep it, yeah, just around there, about -7 kind of looks, yeah, that looks really nice. Okay, moving on. Now the tone curve, if I bring it back to 0, you can see it makes a massive difference. If we reset just this channel, you can see that it's not doing a ton, but right here is this little subtle S curve. If I brought up the highlights here, you can start to get it, it starts to get a bit more contrasty again, which is not what we want. So I've left it like that. Color-wise, I'm gonna make sure that these bricks come back to a bit more of a red or orange. Let's see, yeah, there we go, a bit more of a red. Awesome, okay. So if we're talking film specifically, what film does have is a lot of grain. So in this preset, I've included a bit of a grain effect. So if we scroll right down to the very bottom, you'll see grain here and amount 40, size 25, and roughness 100. So this is gonna be the level of grain in your image. If I scroll into the skies, you'll be able to get a good view of what I'm talking about. So if we increase the grain, say something crazy like 80, you'll start to see a lot of grain in the sky, even in the details here, but it's a bit subtle. So the way to increase that and make it look a bit more raw is to change the size. So if we bring that up right away, that 55, you can see that our image is really hard to even see. So I would just reset them back to how the preset has it. This is kind of where I would leave it in this range, but for this image, I might bring the size up just a tad, maybe to 35, and then the same with the amount, just to give it a bit more of a raw look. So it does still have a little bit of a digital edge, so maybe if we just bump it up a little bit more, takes away that look. So with this photo, I'm really happy with how it's starting to look. There are a few more adjustments we can do, but overall, like from this original clean digital looking raw file, we've got this kind of raw, still vibrant looking film looking file. Okay, the next image I took a few months ago at Mount Hassel. This is down the Stirling Ranges in Western Australia, kind of like the only sort of mountains we've got here. So if we jump into this photo, you can see that this was shot on a proper digital camera. So this was shot on my Sony a7 III from memory, and you can see that it is a clean looking digital file. It is a raw file, so if I put like a regular preset on that I may have used in the past, you can see it does look quite clean and, you know, not too raw, which is kind of what we're wanting with this film approach. So to start off, let's just sort out our crop here. Let me just level that horizon. Boom. And then if we go ahead and add that preset on, you can see right away this preset is kind of proof that just pressing the button and leaving it on your image isn't gonna make an amazing photo. So we're gonna have to do a bit more adjusting to this image. So to start off, let's bring the exposure back down. Just for now, I do like to raise the exposure, but just for now, let's bring it down. You can see half our sky is blown out. So I might just drop the crop in a little bit more, but most of our sky is gone. So let's drop the highlights quite a lot. Obviously, this isn't how a film photo would usually look, but that's just what we're gonna do for this image with the preset. So from there, we've dropped the highlights. Let's raise up the shadows just a tad there. And then I'm gonna drop the whites. Blacks can stay the same or in that range. So with this image, like I said, we're gonna play a bit more with the vibrancy. So if I bring this up, you can start to see maybe around plus 13, 14, the blues and the greens start to really pop out. And that's kind of the look I wanna get with this photo. But I'm noticing it's still a lot cool, like the image overall. So let's up the white balance, and there you go. That's starting to look a lot more normal, a lot more natural, and a lot more film. So I think we'll leave it at about just a tad below. That looks really good there. So I'm really happy with this overall adjustment. I might even just drop the clarity down a fraction. But if we look at the original digital file and then we compare it back to this film edit, you can really notice a massive difference in how a preset and with a bit of tweaking, you can get a nice look. That looks a bit more raw, it looks a bit more authentic than just this pure clean landscape. So moving on, the color and the hue, saturation, and the luminance tabs of this preset are very I've adjusted a lot of it to make sure it applies to different photos, but if you can go through different colors, and if say there are no purples or greens in your image and take those out, you're not gonna really notice a massive difference. So let's just leave them for now. I didn't mention it in the last photo, But with this photo, I want to point out that we're not actually touching the sharpening of this image. So if you've seen a few of my past editing videos, you'll know that I really like to sharpen up my images, often bringing them to about 65, 75. But right away, you can instantly see that that's a sharp looking digital image. So I'm gonna drop that back down to, you can keep it at 40 at the basic, but the preset and how I would have it for this is at 0. Pretty unorthodox, but it works. So I'm really happy with it. Finally, with the grain, I really like the spread of grains, but I'm gonna just increase the size like we did with the last one, just to give it a bit more of a raw effect. So overall, when you're editing photos that are raw to look more like film, what you wanna look for is the grain, the sharpness, and the clarity. You wanna kind of balance them out to make sure they don't look so edgy. And along with that, bumping the blacks and bumping the shadows give you that nice flat look. You can really get this in the tone curve, but I like to do it in the basic adjustments. So that's something to consider when you're actually editing your own. So overall, if we look at our film edited photo, you'll notice that compared to its original, that it looks a whole lot more authentic and a lot more like film with that grain and that style. Personally, I know this image was shot on my Sony a7 III, but it does look a lot more authentic and a bit more nostalgic compared to an edited digital file, which is kind of the whole thing we're trying to do here with editing our photos to look like film. And there you go, guys. That's pretty much how I get a film looking image out of my Fujifilm RAW photos. It's a really simple approach, and if you use the preset that I've provided, you're gonna get a really nice look and starting point for your photos. A reminder that this preset is a base preset. Please don't just chuck this on every photo and not make any adjustments from there. The preset is kind of designed to just be a little base for you to build upon. I know tons of early photographers that slap on any sort of preset and just export their photo, and they're confused as to why they don't look as good as they did in the images. But by making a few tweaking adjustments to your look, you're gonna start to use these presets in your own style. And finally, I think it's worth mentioning again that whilst we are editing raw Fujifilm digital files, you're never gonna get that same look as you would from actual film. This video has been about making digital files look like film, and obviously the only way you're gonna get photos to look like film is to actually shoot on film. So it's something I would recommend to you, but in this time when it's really hard to find film and prices are so high, this is a cool little experiment you can go through with some of your older photos. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and got a bit of value out of this. Be sure to download that preset and use it, and please let me know how it goes. I'd love to see the preset used on your photos. But otherwise, guys, if you could like and subscribe and do everything else, that would be great, and I'll see you in the next video.